And with us right now, we've got Daron Robertson. Daron, you're the CEO and co-founder of BHive. We'll talk about that in a moment. And the founder of BroadPath Healthcare Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here.
So Daron,
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're all here.
We're all here.
Thank you to our listeners as well for being here and our viewers.
Yes.
So how did you get into the space? You know, you're originally from Michigan, is that right? Or maybe you spent some time there for your MBA.
You're correct. I went to school there. Yeah, I'm from Arizona initially, where I live now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what did you think of your 3-4 years in Michigan?
I loved it. I had never been to spent that much time in the Midwest, and you know, I wasn't a huge football fan before, and I was after. So
yeah. So I'm originally from Michigan, and great people. The winters are a little long, especially if you're used to being in Arizona.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you got your MBA, and I guess then what happened?
So I moved to Chicago. I worked in the consulting industry for a while, and ended up in Chicago for almost 10 years. And finally said that I couldn't take another year of the cold winters. I'm an avid rock climber, and you can imagine the climbing opportunities there are plentiful. Had to go down to Kentucky to climb. So I finally moved to Arizona, and that's what led me down the current path that I'm on now.
Yeah. So in 2006, how did you go from working in management consultant to starting BroadPath?
I'd actually had a hop at a firm in Chicago after consulting that was very similar to what I did with BroadPath. I had somewhere read the advice that you increase your odds significantly of founding a successful business if you do the thing that you already know, right? So I had learned it backward and forward with the company that I worked for in Chicago, and when I moved to Arizona, that's exactly what I started doing there. So BroadPath, this is back in 2008. I started the company in September, just before Lehman collapsed. So timing wasn't great from that perspective. But we pushed through that little bit of a downturn there, and about 6 months later landed our first client, and we're off and running. So BroadPath, the company founded in 2008, is really a specialized kind of niche outsourcing provider of services to the healthcare sector. And the reason it's niche is we're the only player in that industry that has 100% remote work from home model. That's relatively rare in the healthcare space because PHI, data security, it's not the most trusted way of working, right? So it's been, until recently, a fairly slow rate of adoption within the healthcare space, at least with services providers like our company.
Yeah. Well, then of course, 2020, I can't imagine what your life is like now. I guess you, not only that, but, in 2014, then, you spun off BHive, and you mind kind of sharing how that came to be?
Yeah. So BHive is a platform. It's a virtual workplace. And the goal with BHive is really to make it working from home a more connected experience. And, you might have seen a lot of these studies that are coming out that point to loneliness and social isolation as somewhat emergent issues in our society. The more we do remote work and a variety of things, it's a big issue. It's an increasing, challenging issue. And there are very real tangible health impacts from being lonely and being isolated socially. And traditionally, work has been, 10 hours a day you're spending with other people in close proximity. Work has been an antidote to social isolation. Working remotely doesn't give you that same benefit necessarily right out of the gate. So we created our own software platform called BHive, starting about 6 years ago, in order to sort of hit that head on and make it seem like you never left the office. Meaning, on BHive, we're all on camera together throughout the day. And you can see your coworkers, your team members, you can see your supervisor, they can see you, just like the same visibility you would get in an office. We've replicated in BHive. So unlike Teams or Skype, which is really built, or Zoom, built for the meeting, just the meeting, BHive is kind of that in-between meeting experience, kind of like you're hanging out together virtually, right? You can glance over, you can see each other working. If you've got a question, you want to know, is that person there? Can they take my call? You know that right away because you can see them just like you could in an office. So that's what BHive is about.
Wow. Okay. So you developed this back in 2014. Who would have known that 6 years later, everybody would be forced to work from home? So what has 2020 been like for both companies? Talk about being just so well positioned.
It's been an interesting and surreal experience, to say the least. We've gone from being sort of the unique outlier in a space dominated by multi-billion-dollar competitors, to having overnight everyone sort of outlook the same as us. Everyone transitioned to work from home. And these are companies with hundreds of thousands of employees all across the globe, really. So our view on what's happening here is that we sort of divide, we've got this little simple three-stage model, right? That we call our work from home maturity model. And it's stage one is really where we are today. We call it lift and shift, right? Everyone got their employees deployed at home and up and running, at least minimally productive, and the sky didn't fall, right? And we largely planted, declared victory there, planted the flag. Our view on what's going to happen next, for companies that want to embrace this model, this remote work model long term, stage two is really the next frontier, which is like building processes that keep employees productive, engaged, accountable in that at-home environment, right? Because pre-COVID, the companies that were doing work from home were doing it as largely a reward system. So you take your top 10% of performers and you say, hey, you're so good, would you like to work from home? So as you can imagine, the results that you got out of that reward-based model are very different when
the
bottom 10% is also
I just got a reward. I can skate.
I can skate. Yeah, exactly. That's right. And so stage two is sort of about defining the processes that make engender productivity, performance, accountability, things like that. And then stage three, which is where our focus is on building culture, which is the hardest thing to do in a remote environment, right? So that's what the BHive technology is really all about, that sense of connection, that being together all day long engenders. And our view is that for companies that are interested in making remote work stick, they're going to have to get good at the stage two and stage three initiatives, as well as just the lift and shift that already occurred.
What about companies that, for example, my companies, for the past 13, 14 years, well, even before that, have always been just completely online, completely remote, completely virtual. Yeah. I've never never seriously considered even getting office space. I'm just trying to think out loud here, how might our company culture or our team be impacted by having an application open where, hey, we're all together?
Yeah. In our view, it would only add to the experience. It really depends on what your day-to-day environment is already like. Josh, I imagine you're in Zoom meetings all day long already, and I don't know that you would get much of a loneliness lift or a connection lift from a tool like BHive, right? But some of your employees might. I mean, it's really dependent on where you are in your own journey there. The other thing that we've noticed is that scale matters here, right? So what might work well for a company with, I don't know how big your organization is, but a company with 10, 15 employees might not work as well for a company with 1,000 employees, right? So some of the enterprises that we're selling BHive to have, 40, 50,000 employees that are working remotely, and they're struggling to make that process scale well for that large number of employees.
Yeah. Well, so, one hybrid that I've heard of, and as a matter of fact, I was just listening to a podcast. Gosh, I forget who it was. It was James Carberry was talking about it, how he does open office hours with his team. It's like 1 hour a week. And he's like, listen, if you're on, I'm going to have my camera on, and, you could tap me on the shoulder if you need anything. Yep. Otherwise, you're just going to see me doing my thing. So I would imagine that, can you talk a little bit? That's one model. Can you share maybe any other kind of like use cases?
Yeah, that BHive can be used for that purpose too. What we found is that, and we're using this not just in the US, but also abroad in the Philippines. And what we found is that bandwidth can sometimes be an issue. So that open office hour is perfect use case for BHive, and it'll do it in a less bandwidth intensive way than the normal tools will. So that's one benefit. By way of example, I'm on BHive as the CEO 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I have been for 6-7 years now. So
oh my gosh,
anyone in the company can look up and see the CEO of BroadPath working if they so desire anytime they want. Not that I'm available to take a call all that time, but at least they have that kind of, we call it kind of radical transparency. So we encourage companies to kind of,
you keep your audio off.
Audio's off. Yeah, that's right. The audio's on when we're in a meeting, right? Just like it is now, but the visual is always on.
How is this superior to, say, Teams or Zoom? How is this a much better? So just to review, I know you mentioned something about this already.
Yeah, so number one, it consumes less bandwidth, right? And so that can be an issue if everyone's in an always-on video all the time. Number two, it's kind of purpose-built for that always-on experience. So we have other features built into it, gamification, for instance. So you can award badges and points based on doing good work. You can reward your employees based on that. It's got an alerting feature. It's got pulse surveys in there. It's got a really useful part of it called My Profile. Very simple, but it's where you go and you kind of decorate your virtual cube, right? You put pictures of yourself there. You talk about your hobbies. You talk about your interests. You might even record a video about yourself. And so it's a way for new members of the team to get to know other people and kind of connect in their own time. So it's got, BHive has a lot of other tools that are kind of, it's like our vision for BHive is that it is the one-stop shop for all things related to remote work. It's where you go to connect. It's where you go to communicate and collaborate. It also, it tests internet speed every minute, up and down automatically. It reports any internet downtime to you, to your supervisor, things like that. So it's really a work from home productivity engagement tool. The other thing that we're doing, which is really interesting to sort of level up on the connection piece, is we've launched this program which we call Hive Life, which is directly, it's like a shared experience with a small group of coworkers where you learn about maybe pet grooming together, or you learn about cooking and nutrition, or you meditate together. And it's all live, facilitated. You're not just in among 5,000 people watching someone with a video, right? It's like you're in there together, interacting, connecting, communicating. So that's how BHive is different, right? It's much more than just a in-meeting communication tool like Zoom.
Yeah, right. I think my Black Mirror brain is kind of going right now. I'm thinking about the future of employees live streaming, not just to their own teams, but externally. And so, hey, watch us. You know, it's like the glass window kind of company. And, you know, now my brain's like thinking like, wait for it, because I'm guaranteed there's going to be a CEO that's going to be like, hey, I live stream whatever I happen to be doing for, you know, these hours a day. You know, obviously they have to, you know, have some kind of control on that. But I'm thinking, whoa, could I do something like that? You know, where people could just kind of watch and because humans love this. They love spying in on people. But now I'll be honest, like I'm worried about like, I don't know, picking my nose, but I guess, you know, if you're in an office environment, you don't pick your nose in the office either. I guess I've been out of the office too long. So I feel no fear, I suppose. But you know, if you're used to working in an office, you're like, okay, that's what restrooms are for. So you can go take care of that. You just have to remember you're on.
You have to remember you're on, and that can be, you know, work from home environment, that can be challenging sometimes. You know, when your kid runs through the door, your wife comes in. So there are some times when you're sort of, you know, you're because you can turn the camera off, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So when you go to lunch, the camera shuts off. When you go on break, camera shuts off. So, but yeah, it's like live streaming, but you're live streaming to a more safe and select group of people who are your employees. And we're all live streaming to one another all the time, just like in an office. It's no different from being in an office. Yeah. Well, this has been very cool. Daron Robertson, I feel like we're looking into the future a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, again, kind of what we've been talking about doesn't become more and more and more of a reality. So your websites, BroadPath is broad-path.com, and BHive's a little tricky. It's go.inbhive.com. That's INBhive.com. So go.inbhive.com, and you can see all about the platform. Pricing wise, I mean, I guess it's kind of based on use, but what's the range on pricing, or where does it start at? It's a standard sort of per user per month charge. Anywhere from $25 to $45 a user per month is typical. It just depends on how many users.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool. All right, Daron Robertson, thank you. Anything else that, aside from the two websites that people might want to take a look at?
No, those two websites. I mean, and if anyone wants a demo, that's it's a visual tool, right? So seeing is believing, and it's much more useful to see that in action than just on a website. But
for sure, Daron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.